My grandmother died on a Tuesday in March. I held her hand as she took her last breath. She was 87 years old and the only person who ever truly loved me. My name is Sofia Martinez, and this is the story of how my aunt tried to steal everything from me. At Grandma's funeral 3 days later, I stood alone at the front row. My Aunt Patricia sat in the back row on her phone. She had not visited Grandma once during her final year in the care home, but she showed up for the funeral, she showed up for the reading of the will, she showed up for the money. I grew up in my grandmother's house. My parents died in a car accident when I was 6 years old. Grandma took me in without hesitation. She raised me while working as a nurse at the county hospital. She helped with homework every night, attended every school play and soccer game. Meanwhile, Aunt Patricia lived 2 hours away with her husband and son. She visited maybe twice a year. Always on holidays, always expecting expensive gifts. Grandma gave them everything they wanted. I learned early that Patricia was the favorite child, and I was just the orphan Grandma had to raise. Aunt Patricia was Grandma's only daughter. She could do no wrong in Grandma's eyes. When Patricia dropped out of college, Grandma said she was too smart for school. When Patricia got divorced twice, Grandma said the men were not good enough. When Patricia asked for money, Grandma wrote checks without question. I watched this pattern my whole life. Patricia took and took but gave Grandma nothing. I never imagined Patricia's greed would grow and become dangerous. I never imagined that one day, she would steal Grandma's final wishes. 2 years ago, Grandma had a stroke. She survived but needed constant care. I was 24 and working as a dental assistant. I cut my hours to part-time so I could take care of her at home. I cooked her meals, helped her bathe and dress. I drove her to doctor appointments twice a week. I managed her 7 different medications. Patricia called once a month if I was lucky. She always had an excuse for why she could not visit. It was either that she was too busy with work or her son had activities or the drive was too long. The excuses never stopped coming. After 18 months, Grandma needed more care than I could manage on my own. Her doctor recommended a residential home with round-the-clock nursing, so I chose Sunshine Valley Care Home. A clean, well-run place with gentle, attentive staff. I went every day after work. I brought her favorite cookies, read aloud from the mystery novels she loved, brushed her hair, and painted her nails. Patricia came 3 times in 12 months. Every visit, she asked to be alone with Grandma. The nurses smiled and said it was sweet. I didn't smile. I felt something uneasy settle deep in my stomach. I was right to be worried. For months before she died, Grandma had a good day. Her mind was clear and sharp. She called me to her bedside at the care home and held my hand tight. She said I had been her greatest blessing. She said she was leaving everything to me. The house, her savings, her car, everything. She said Patricia had taken enough over the years. I cried and told her I just wanted her to get better. She smiled sadly and said she had already contacted a new lawyer. Everything was arranged. I would be taken care of. I believed her completely, but I should have made sure the papers were signed. 1 week after the funeral, we met at the lawyer's office. Mr. Barnes had been Grandma's lawyer for 30 years. He was kind but professional as always. Patricia arrived wearing all black and dark sunglasses. She mopped her dry eyes with a tissue even though no tears fell. I wore jeans and a sweater. I had cried all eyes out already. Mr. Barnes opened the will and started reading. My heart began racing. Mr. Barnes read the will slowly and clearly. I leave my entire estate to my daughter Patricia Moore. This includes my house, all bank accounts, investments, and personal belongings. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs. Patricia gasped dramatically. She said she had no idea. She said Grandma was too generous. Mr. Barnes looked uncomfortable. He said there was a small bequest for me. It contained $5,000 for my college expenses and that was all. I could not breathe. Mr. Barnes asked if I was okay. I nodded but I was lying. This made no sense. Grandma had promised me everything 4 months ago. She said it was already arranged with a new lawyer. Why would she leave everything to Patricia? Patricia put her hand on my shoulder and said, Grandma must have known that I would take better care of the estate. She said I could visit the house any time I wanted. Her voice was sweet like poisoned honey. I pulled away from her touch. Something was very wrong here. I could feel it in my bones. After the meeting, I sat in my car shaking. I called Mr. Barnes from the parking lot. I asked when Grandma had changed her will. He said she had not changed it. This was her original will from 15 years ago. I said that was impossible. Grandma told me 4 months ago she had contacted a new lawyer to update everything. Mr. Barnes went quiet. He said he had not seen or heard from Grandma in over 2 years. She had not made any changes during that time. He sounded concerned now. He asked if I had any proof of what Grandma told me. I drove straight to Sunshine Valley Care Home. I asked the director if I could review the visitor logs for my grandmother's room. She was hesitant at first but agreed when I explained the situation. We sat in her office and went through the records together. Patricia had visited exactly 3 times in 12 months. But something else caught my attention. Each visit was logged as lasting 4 to 5 hours. The director remembered because Patricia always asked the staff to give them complete privacy. She said Patricia claimed they needed private time for important family conversations. My stomach turned. Those were not conversations. Patricia was planning something evil. I went home to the small apartment I had been renting. Grandma's house was now legally Patricia's. I felt sick every time I thought about it. The care home had given me Grandma's belongings in sealed boxes after she passed. I had been too grief-stricken to go through them. Now I started opening each box carefully. It had photos, books, and her favorite blanket that smelled like her perfume. Then I found her iPad at the bottom of the last box. I had given it to her 2 years ago so we could video chat when I could not visit. The battery was dead, so I charged it overnight. The next morning, I turned on Grandma's iPad. Her email was still logged in. I felt guilty looking, but I needed answers. Her inbox had hundreds of unread messages, but one folder caught my eye immediately. It was labeled, Important Legal Documents. Inside were emails between Grandma and a different lawyer. Someone named Miss Helen Carter from Carter and Associates law firm. The emails were from 5 months ago, just after Grandma made me that promise. Grandma had written about wanting to update her will. She wanted to leave everything to me. Miss Carter had replied with forms to fill out. I read through every email slowly, line by line. Miss Carter had sent Grandma the paperwork. They had scheduled an appointment to sign the new will. Then, abruptly, the conversation ended, after just 4 emails back and forth. The final message was from Miss Carter, asking if Grandma still wanted to proceed with the changes. There was no reply. Over the next month, Miss Carter sent 2 follow-up emails. Still nothing. According to the thread, she had also tried calling. I've attempted to reach you by phone but haven't been able to get through, she wrote. That was when it clicked. Patricia hadn't just interfered. She had deliberately cut my grandmother off, blocking her from ever changing that will. I called Miss Carter's office first thing Monday morning. A secretary answered in a professional voice. I explained who I was and that my grandmother had passed away recently. I asked if Miss Carter had helped Grandma with a new will. The secretary put me on hold for several minutes. When she came back, she sounded genuinely sad. She said Miss Carter had met with Grandma once at the care home. They had drafted a completely new will, but Grandma never came to the office to sign the final documents. Miss Carter had tried calling multiple times over 2 months. No one ever answered or returned the calls. I went back to Sunshine Valley with specific dates written down. The dates Patricia had visited matched exactly with when Grandma stopped responding to Miss Carter. I asked to speak with the head nurse who had cared for Grandma. Nurse Kelly remembered my grandmother fondly. She also remembered something important. Patricia had come to the nurses' station during her second visit. She told them Grandma was getting scam calls and needed protection. She asked them to screen all incoming calls and block any unknown numbers. The staff had agreed, thinking they were protecting an elderly patient. Miss Carter's office number would have been blocked automatically. Patricia had isolated Grandma on purpose. I sat in my car outside the care home for an hour. Patricia had deliberately prevented Grandma from changing her will. She had blocked the lawyer's calls. She had kept Grandma isolated from legal help. This was elder abuse. This was fraud and manipulation. But how could I prove it in court? The email showed Grandma's intent but not completion. Mr. Barnes said the old will was legally valid. I needed more evidence. I needed concrete proof that Patricia had manipulated a sick old woman. I needed to find documentation. Then I remembered something. Grandma always kept a journal. Instead of breaking into the house, I contacted Miss Carter directly. I showed her all the emails from Grandma's iPad. I explained about the blocked phone calls. I told her about Patricia's suspicious visits. Miss Carter listened carefully to everything. She said we had enough evidence to file for a temporary restraining order on the estate. We could freeze all accounts and property transfers while we investigated further. More importantly, we could get a court order to search the house for additional evidence before Patricia destroyed anything. She said Grandma's journal entries would be crucial if we could find them. We filed the emergency petition that same day. The judge reviewed our emergency petition within 48 hours. He granted a temporary restraining order freezing all of Grandma's assets. Patricia could not sell the house. She could not access the bank accounts. She could not remove anything from the property. The judge also granted us permission to search the house for documents related to the case. We had 72 hours to conduct the search with a court-appointed monitor present. Patricia was furious. She called me, screaming. She said I was an ungrateful brat. She said I would regret this. I hung up on her. For once, I showed some balls. 2 days later, Miss Carter and I returned to Grandma's house with a court-appointed monitor. Patricia was already there, along with her lawyer. The moment she saw me, her eyes filled with raw, undisguised hatred. We began in Grandma's bedroom, the room where I had slept countless nights as a child. Patricia had been rummaging through everything. Clothes lay in messy piles on the bed. Drawers were yanked open and left hanging. I moved to Grandma's antique writing desk, the one she'd inherited from her own mother. My hands shook as I checked the back panel. The secret compartment I discovered years ago as a kid slid open. Inside was a journal. Grandma had written in it every single day for 5 years. The final entry was dated just 2 weeks before she died. We sat in the living room as Miss Carter read through the journal. The court monitor photographed each page as evidence. The entries from the last year were absolutely heartbreaking. Grandma wrote about wanting to see Miss Carter, but Patricia kept canceling the transportation. She wrote about trying to call the lawyer, but her phone would not let her dial out. She wrote about asking Patricia why the lawyer stopped calling. Patricia had lied and said Miss Carter went out of business. Every word was a lie. Grandma wrote that she felt trapped and scared. She wrote my name over and over. Sophia deserves everything. I am so sorry, Sophia. Please forgive me, Sophia. Miss Carter asked to search Grandma's closet. Hidden in the back was a lockbox. I knew the combination. It was Grandma's birthday. Inside were bank statements going back 3 years. Large withdrawals were highlighted in yellow by Grandma herself. $20,000 here. $15,000 there. $30,000 another time. All from the last 2 years. Every single one was signed by Patricia under her power of attorney. Grandma's savings had been drained from $300,000 down to almost nothing. Patricia had been systematically stealing from her for years. The inheritance she just received was money she had already taken. She was stealing from a dead woman she had already robbed. Miss Carter spent the next week building an airtight case. The journal entries showing Grandma felt trapped and scared. The blocked phone calls documented by the care home. The visitor logs showing Patricia's suspicious timing. The bank statements showing systematic theft. The emails showing Grandma's clear intention to change her will. We also subpoenaed the care home's phone records. They showed multiple blocked calls from Miss Carter's office number. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that Grandma was confused at the end. But the journal entries were detailed and clear. Grandma knew exactly what was happening. She just could not stop it. Miss Carter filed a comprehensive lawsuit. We sued for elder financial abuse, fraud, undue influence, and theft. We also filed a petition to invalidate the old will and honor Grandma's stated intentions. We reported everything to the police and Adult Protective Services. The district attorney opened a criminal investigation into Patricia. She hired an expensive lawyer with money she had probably stolen from Grandma. She claimed Grandma had always wanted her to have everything. She claimed I was lying because I was bitter about being an orphan, but she had no proof to that. We had Grandma's own words. We had the bank records. We had the truth. 6 months later, we went to court. I sat at the table with Miss Carter feeling nervous but determined. Patricia sat across from us with her lawyer looking confident. The judge spent 3 hours reviewing all the evidence. Grandma's journal entries where she wrote about being scared. The blocked phone calls from Miss Carter's office clearly documented by the care home. The visitor logs showing Patricia's calculated timing. The bank statements showing $200,000 stolen. Patricia's lawyer tried desperately to explain it away. He said the withdrawals were for Grandma's care expenses. But the care home bills something different, thereby exposing another lie of hers. The silence in the courtroom during that final week was deafening. When the judge finally took the bench, his expression was carved from granite. He didn't just read a verdict. He dismantled Patricia's entire life. He spoke of calculated isolation and predatory greed, labeling her power of attorney as nothing more than a license to steal. When he declared the 15-year-old was a product of fraud and reinstated Grandma's true wishes, the air left the room. Patricia stood up, screaming that this was not fair. Her lawyer tried to calm her down. The judge threatened to hold her in contempt of court. But the judge was not finished. He ordered Patricia to repay every single dollar she had stolen with interest. The total came to $267,000. He said if she could not pay within 90 days, her assets would be seized and sold. He also forwarded the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Patricia's face went completely white. She stumbled out of the courtroom like a zombie. Her lawyer followed looking defeated. Miss Carter hugged me tight. She said Grandma would be so proud of me. I cried for the first time since the funeral. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Justice tears. Grandma's voice had finally been heard after being silenced for so long. 3 months later, the district attorney filed criminal charges against Patricia. Elder financial abuse. Theft by deception. Fraud against a vulnerable adult. Each charge carried serious prison time. Patricia pleaded guilty as part of a deal. She received 2 years in county jail plus 5 years probation. She would also have to pay full restitution. Her son stopped talking to her completely when he learned what she had done to his own grandmother. Her friends abandoned her. Her reputation was destroyed forever. She tried to apologize to me once through her lawyer. I refused to respond. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. Some actions cannot be undone. 4 months after the verdict, I moved back into Grandma's house. My house now. Every room held precious memories. I repainted the walls in colors Grandma would have loved. I planted roses and tulips in the garden just like she used to. I set up her favorite rocking chair by the big front window. I hung photos of us together throughout every room. Her smile watching over me always. Patricia had to sell her own house to pay back the stolen money. She moved into a tiny apartment in a bad part of town. She lost everything while I gained everything. Justice had been served completely. People ask if I feel bad about what happened to Aunt Patricia. I do not feel bad at all. She stole from an elderly woman who loved her unconditionally. She isolated my grandmother in her final months when Grandma needed her most. She took advantage of someone who was sick, scared, and vulnerable. She deserved everything she got and more. I learned that family does not always mean loyalty. Blood does not automatically mean love. Real family shows up. Real family cares. Real family protects the vulnerable. Grandma taught me that through her life and even through her death. Now I live in her house, surrounded by her memory, finally at peace. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever dealt with family members fighting over inheritance? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one and sometimes feature them in future videos.